Hey everyone, this is Robin with Heroes Legends Studios. If you don't know already, I'm working with Blind Cat Studios on developing Koitsugi Legend of the Water Guardians. You can wishlist it on Steam today, and right now I'm developing a physics-based um, controller here, and I'm going to show you how I do it, and I'm going to provide all the code available to you, and you can use it however you want. Um, I think this provides a great way for how to simulate the player being able to like push this lily stem, how to interact with it in somewhat a simple way. And overall, it is there are quite a few steps, but it creates this little nice effect of us being able to interact with these lilies. If you see here, we're going to see these lilies. If I can select it, I'm just going to select all, right click, select children, and we're going to be rigging these lilies. And it's a little sloppy right now, but you get the gist. The rigging this lily with a skeleton, a lot of bones here, so that we can interact with. We're going to be adding hinge joints, and this code is going to be adding all these hinge joints, all these components to make it easier, so you're not doing one at a time, so that you can focus on like adding, painting the weights of these whatever you may use, but this for our example, these lilies, and interact with them so that you can focus more on getting a more realistic look from physics without having to add so many components one at a time to maybe 30 bones here. So uh, manually, you're going to have to go to all these components, or sorry, to all these textures, these lily textures, or whatever you may use for a similar effect. Add these bones, paint the weights, create the geometry in the sprite editor, and then I'm going to provide and go over all these scripts that on the root, there's going to be a little inspector component here that's going to be able to generate all these components, the box colliders, the hinges, the rigid bodies, and a few other things that you're going to be able to manipulate. And I'm going to be open to feedback for improvements. And so if you have feedback, please check it out. Provide those feedback and let me know what you think would be a good improvement, and overall, like, what to do, because improving this little editor script is going to help our game out, Koitsugi, and hopefully you can get something from this as well. But here you're going to see exactly everything that's added to add this little effect here of being able to like interact. Maybe you'll be able to manipulate or update the scripts however you want to for your game needs. But overall, basically what's happening is providing hinge joints along this entire bone structure for it to animate and wave back and forth as the player interacts with it, and um, reversing the gravity so that it pulls up towards the surface of the water, like if it's floating, and to get this kind of wavy effect, right? So we're going to kind of go over all those steps, right? So first thing is that I'm going to select my prefab here on the sprite editor. I'm going to select here. If you're on your projects folder, this will kind of jump you to um, the asset that is needed. And for our lilies, we put them all into one texture. So this allows us to keep a smaller file size, right? And keep things a little bit more organized. So I'm just going to go over to the inspector. I'm going to select this asset, not the individual textures, right? Or sprites. And, if you want to do the same thing, you can always select the sprite mode should be multiple, mesh types tight. Um, all these settings are going to be custom to your game. So hopefully you have those all dialed in before you start doing this. Okay. So just go ahead and open up the sprite editor. I'm going to just make this full screen. So you're going to see here all the individual sprites. So we've already set this up. If you don't know how to do this, there are tutorials online. I'm gonna skip this part about setting these colliders up and such. We're just gonna jump ahead to seeing that these individual cutouts, right, of these lilies, they're named specifically. So I've already set up 1 and 2, and we're gonna go ahead and set up 0 here. Okay. So I'm going to go to this drop down menu here, click skinning editor. This is how you're going to be able to paint weights, create skeletons using bones and whatnot. So you can see that these two have bones. They have the geometry is much more. You can see these vertices here and edges. You can see this one has even more. And so you can see this one's a little bit more minimal, but I actually want to be able to increase that. So I'm going to go down to geometry and auto geometry. I'm going to increase this. This should be the same as all of them. So I'm just going to hit generate for selected. I want that subdivide to be 100. I want it to be a little bit more so that we can actually like see and the weights and the texture actually move along with it. So let's go ahead and create these bones. So I'm going to start from the bottom. If you just click create bone, you can left click down at the bottom, and I'm going to make small bones so that we generate. So when we paint the texture to those bones, we can see more flexible movement in the texture. If you're not familiar with painting weights, creating bones, and how like that affects things, I'm not really going to go over that. This is just really a quick example of how to like, for my level designer, blind cat, this is just to show how, hey, this is how you do it. So we can use this script again and again. And for anyone who wants to use the script, this is how to use it. Just that's all this video is really going to be about, is how to, not really explaining all the intricate details of how to use the editor and whatnot. So if you do have questions about it, feel free to ask, but I am going to go further into this about just doing it, going through these steps and explaining like what's happening. But and so if you don't know, if it doesn't make sense, feel free to ask, or there might be other tutorials that can better explain it. So I'm going to get to this top here. I'm just going to make some simple bones. You right click to end it. I'm going to go back and click on this one here. Here, left click, left click, left click, right? Right click. So that's going to be, and so as you paint these weights, I'm just going to hit auto weights, right? That's going to generate the weights, and you can start seeing like it gets color coordinated, right? So all these little areas are going to be affected by those bones moving. When you add the hinge joints, those start rotating a little bit at a time, and you can start seeing it manipulate the mesh of the texture. So right now, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to keep everything real generic. If we want to fine tune it, you can however you want. The big part about this is what the scripts do next, right? So this, fine tune this however you want, paint the weights however you want. If you want them to, you can always preview the mesh here, right? You can kind of rotate, see how the mesh actually manipulates. Make sure you always hit apply at the end, right? And we're gonna go ahead and close this for editor. Okay, so that's gonna be 0, right? So what I want to do is drag over 0 now into the hierarchy, and that's gonna create this sprite. Doesn't really have much for us, like where are the bones? So you have to add this new component called sprite skin. And on here, again, there's nothing associated here. So what we want to do is create bones. And this is going to give you the root bone. And like, here's 21 bones that I generated, right? So that's a lot of bones to be adding hinge joints to, rigid bodies to, one at a time. And then being able to like change those a lot, it just seems like a big hassle to me. So that's why I'm generating these scripts to do a lot of the stuff for me. And they're real basic scripts for me, and I was just kind of trying to figure out like, okay, what do we do? What do we need to do to make this a little bit this process a little bit simpler? Right? So the first script we're going to go over is the editor script. This is going to be the generator script is called Lily STEM Physics Generator. There's going to be a few components here. Being able to create the box collider size. Again, once you generate it, you're going to be able to remove those components, change those settings, generate them again. Right? You're going to want to put this on your root bone, not your parent object. Okay, right? That is a prereq there, because our root bone should not move. Right? We don't want our root bone to move. By default, and maybe that's something I add, the physics generator, because it's for our Lily stems, it will reverse gravity. The gravity will be -1. A few other things here are like the box colliders, how size. So for our lilies, or typically for our bones, they're about 0.8 long, and then a y of 0.2. This makes like a skinny collider going up, just like the other ones. The hinge joint, or sorry, the hinge limits, right? We want to use limits. I do recommend using limits, as they can give better sway back and forth, so they don't like circle each other. I am going to make like -15 and 15. That gives us more sway and resistance. And we're going to hit generate, right? So we're going to take a look at this script. And this is going to, in all the children, so we're going to right click, hit select children. You can see there would have been nothing here. And we can also see, like, we go remove all components. You can see everything's gone. The other thing, this is just for our game. The sorting later, I'm going to put to player ground. Okay, and you see it there. But you can see in the bones, there's no components here. But what components is it going to generate, right? And this is going to be something custom for our stem Lily, but this is how we're doing it. It's going to add a box collider. That box collider, you can see those sizes here. You can kind of see that they overlap. Maybe 0.8 wasn't the right size. Maybe it needs to be like 0.5 or something. And of course, you can always do like select all and then hit 0.6, 0.5. You can see now here everything's rotated. Or sorry, everything is like shown here. Everything's pretty close. You can see how some bones overlap here, right? And whether or not we want to have like an offset here. And actually, there probably should be some kind of offset, like 0.2. Oops, that's the wrong one. And so you can just select everything, and everything's going to change by itself. But I felt like having if you already know those settings, why like just hit that generate button, right? So that looks good. That's the box collider. It's going to add a rigid body. Like I said, it's adding the gravity scales -1. You can change the mass and kind of mess around with effects. Again, manipulate the scripts however you want to see best fit, or I'll make updates as needed. You can see the hinge joint gets added here as well, and it's going to add those rigid bodies as needed, right? So it's always going to get the previous one and connect it, so because it needs to know what rigid body it's connected to. You'll also see there's two scripts here. Apply force and direction, which is what's going to apply the force to that bone, right? I forgot to update, so let's go ahead and select all children. And we're going to make this force a bit about 2. And then So when the player moves through these trigger boxes, because the box glider is also going to be a trigger, right? As you pass through, it's going to push that bone in one direction, and because it's connected to other bones, though, it's going to pull those bones, right? It's all physics um, enabled, right? So next is this trigger event. This is a little bit when the object is created. I'm going to show you like there's an on awake function that will add an action here. It doesn't appear, but it does work. So if someone knows what's going on with that, or can tell me, um, maybe I'm adding it wrong. I mean, it works. It just doesn't appear here in the inspector because it happens on awake. But that is because it needs to have a reference to the game object, and you can do that manually, or you can do it on awake when the game starts running. So um, if you have a bunch of these, I haven't done any like tests, performance testing, but it shouldn't cause too much problems. It shouldn't cause any problems really. So, but that could be like a performance enhancement, trying to figure out how to generate these colliders references before without having to like run it on start or on awake. All right. So that's the whole point of it, is that you create these bones, you add this one script, this generator script, you hit generate, add some pieces to this, and again, we can make sure that we keep those values here. You just hit generate, boom, and then you move on to the next stem, right? And then once you fine tune these values for one prefab, you can start translating them to other like art pieces, right? Because you're not going to have just one texture, right? So cool. So I'm just going to drop this over to my projects inside my prefabs, generate prefab, right? It's always good to have prefabs. Ideally, that's all you need. We can see, let me move this over. Move this over here. And let's go ahead and hit play, and we're going to be able to see it move. Then we'll go over the scripts. So that's all you need to do. You can kind of see like that gets wild. I think it did hit something. There are additional values that we can manipulate. You can see here. That's all you need to do, and everything works. So if you're just going to use the scripts just how we are, you're going to fine tune everything you need. You can like stop here and move on with your day. But I'm going to go over all the scripts and what they do, and we'll fine tune these at a later time. All right. So first up is the actual generator script. These are all AI generated code comments and summaries for the most part. So if there's things that don't sound right, just let me know. I'll update them. So here we have this physics generator. This is the script that is going to add all the components, right? And you'll be able to update options here for what you need. So you can see here's the box collider. They're all serialized fields, all private. So use hinge limits on hinge lower limit and upper limit. So other things that I can make public or more customizable would be like having the rigid body scale. You can set that to be negative or positive or whatever you may want. Maybe I'll make future improvements, but I was just trying to make this kind of quick. So it's going to add these components: box collider, rigid body, hinge joint. Again, you need a rigid body and box collider for these scripts. You need a rigid body for the hinge joint. and whatnot. Uh, so on Awake, like I said, there was an issue with updating the event listeners with the generate button. Okay, it was not working. Don't know why. It should have been working. It was not getting the reference to the objects, even though it should have been. And so it's most likely like a runtime error. So I have to put it on awake. So when you put this object in the hierarchy, it's going to generate, or it's going to add all these listeners, but they don't appear in the inspector. Not fun, right? So again, that's just it works. You can see it work. The listeners are there, they're just not visible for some reason. So if anyone knows how to make those visible, or I'm thinking about just making it private so we don't even see it, but just exposing it now just so I know, and anyone who sees this kind of knows what's going on. Um, so on awake, we're gonna get that trigger events script. This trigger event script is just a generic script that I've made. Our game is very is going towards a Unity event driven approach and component driven approach. So I have a trigger event class that on this object, if anything happens, you can go in here and you would be able to just add events. Say, you know what, I want XYZ to happen on trigger enter, on trigger exit, on trigger stay, right? And so right now I kind of force only the one listener to occur. So that's definitely an improvement that I need to come back to allow such things as the exit and stay. So you can just add your own events to as you need, right? And maybe even adding that on the generate button. It's like I want these events to occur one at a time, but um, that's just part of making the script a little bit better and whatnot. So that's all this does, is that it takes the collider as a trigger, and on trigger enter, it's going to hit invoke all those Unity events, all those actions. Um, and that's what it is doing in the generator, right? It's adding the listeners to the trigger events. So, and it only adds it to the enter, right? This is a real simple script. People have ideas for more stuff to do. We can add. Um, but it takes the collider of this object and applies it to the apply force in direction object, right? So if you don't know, this is what it's doing. Basically, we're going to hit enter, or sorry, add this. We're going to add this bone, and we're going to go look for apply force in direction, apply force. So on trigger enter, when that function is called, it's going to invoke apply force in direction, apply force function, right? Which is here. If you're not familiar with Unity events, I'll probably make another tutorial on that. That's going to be a lot simpler than what I'm doing here. But this is really meant for Blind Cat and anyone who else wants to like jump into this kind of advanced, simple Lily physics generator thing. I need to make a video, and I'm making it now. So cool beans. Hope you all enjoy it. Um, so this apply force in direction is another script. It will you can manually, so you can use this, and you can use these scripts anywhere, right? You don't have to use it with the physics generator, right? The physics generator is just dependent on these things. The apply force in direction, you can use it to use the compass direction. Um, And oh, like a little side note, like we do use everything is in the blind cat namespace. You don't have to use that namespace. You can just copy the code and put it wherever, right? That's fine. I don't care. I don't think blind cat cares. We'll see. Um, but you can force that to use the compass directions, and actually, I don't. The compass direction does come from our movement class. Okay, so I need to provide that to you all because I did not provide it. So I'll make sure I provide that in when I upload this video. Because you're gonna want that. So, anyways, but we don't use it for the physics generator, just so you have it because it's a requirement here. So what happens is we're looking for that apply force function. And it's going to say, hey, our force direction is going to be our position minus our collision. So that's the direction of the force. And we're going to call that apply force function, which is if it's using the apply force direction, or sorry, the compass direction, then it's going to apply that direction that you want to the force of to this rigid body, right? Otherwise, it's going to normalize that force direction provided. So, player is going left to right, it's going to push to the right. If it's right to left, it's going to push to the left. Okay, simple as that. Um, there's a decent amount of code here, so you're able to manipulate that force in the code, but it is not part of the generation component, generation properties. So again, I might change that in the future. So if things change, I'll make comments in the README in the change log. So next up is the remove all components. This just removes everything. So say like you created everything and you're like, well, I didn't like that. I think everything needs to be like I did with the box colliders. The box colliders came out a little bit too tall. So I'm going to just remove all those components. So it removes all the components from the children objects. And you're able to go back and change your properties and then generate those again. Cool, right? And let me know if you guys have any questions about this trigger event or using Unity events or Unity actions, because I think this is a useful way to really generate components and just call actions as you need. You can remove those actions. Say, I'll make more tutorials about how Blind Cat and I have been developing the Koitsugi game and how I spent like the last 9 months refactoring all our code to generate a new system, a new component system using it. Okay, shoot, sorry. I'm using Clipchamp and it has a 30-minute like cap on recording. Um, I think that's just because memory issues. So I'm gonna try to go back to where I left off, talking about the actually editor script. Um, I'll find I've been using AI or Copilot to generate and help out with code. So it actually generated this for me because I was like, hey, like how do I add buttons to generate code and add components, things, and it like did a few different things for me. But I'm gonna go into that in some other video about how I use AI and Copilot to help me learn and kind of start improving my coding process in Unity. Anyways, so we've got this onInspector GUI. This is part of the custom editor type of Lily STEM physics generator. And that's what it's looking for. That's looking for that component. So on the inspector GUI, if we're if the inspector GUI is on this component physics generator, we're going to go ahead and draw some buttons, right? It's going to lay out this button called generate components, and it's going to say that generator, generate components on children, and remove all components. Right. Take a quick look. These are public functions. So if you want to be able to access these functions from the editor, they have to be public, right? Um, so that's a really cool thing. I don't really mess with the editor too much. I don't make my own tools, and maybe I'm going to start jumping into that. But I think that's it. If you guys have any questions, I kind of went through everything really quick. Again, this whole video is just for me to uh, tell Blind Cat and anyone else who wants to use these scripts how to set up real quickly. This is definitely an advanced video. If you want to customize it for your own use, the scripts are there for you and available. If you have questions or have suggestions about updating or want to use it for your own game and don't know how to update it, want to make some changes, reach out, let me know. Comment on my YouTube, follow my social media. Again, guys, I'm trying to become an independent game developer, software developer. So support me. You can follow my channel, subscribe to my YouTube, follow me on Twitch, follow my Instagram. My website should be in all the bio links and should be on this video. So if you're looking for help on game development or software development for mobile applications and in video games, right? Reach out, let me know. I'm just trying to make some money here and there to support my indie software and game development. So thanks everyone for watching it. If you made it this long, I appreciate it. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks.